My name is Ruby Summers. I'm the box office manager at Northern Stage, and I'm here today to talk with Carol Dunn, our producing artistic director, and the director of our upcoming show, Only Yesterday.
Hurrah!
So, Carol, why'd you choose to do this world premiere production at Northern Stage?
Well, a couple of reasons. So the most important reason is that we have a wonderful playwright who lives in Norwich named Bob Stevens, and he wrote a one-act play about John Lennon and Paul McCartney about 5 years ago, I think, that I think really captured the idea of who these young boys were before they became famous, before they completely changed our lives. And when I met with Bob and read that one act, I thought, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. No one's been able to really portray the Beatles very well, I don't think. But Bob found a way in that is not a jukebox musical. It's not, oh, just Beatles songs after Beatles songs. It really is a window into icons as human beings. So that's the biggest reason. It's really good. And the second reason is we are so committed to developing new work at Northern Stage. It's a big part of our mission now. If we create work for the American theater, it brings vitality to our own organization. It helps inform the other plays that we do. And it gives Northern Stage a national profile that's just important. We're a center of excellence, and so we need to have public national outreach.
And so this production has gone through a whole life at Northern Stage. So can you just talk a little bit about the New Works process and what has changed throughout all the readings and workshops?
A lot. So New Works Now is our flagship New Works festival. We started it 5 years ago. This year was New Works Now 5.0. I believe we did a workshop of this play 4 years ago. And at the time, the play had some music in it. It had no music when Bob first wrote it. And Bob and I got together and said, well, this is such an opportunity to bring music in. And what would John Lennon and Paul McCartney play in their hotel room? They're not going to play all the Beatles' greatest hits. They're going to play things that they like to play of their hits, or a Bob Dylan song, or a Buddy Holly song. You know, it's when they're in their hotel room that they're trying to figure out who they are musically. So it opened up a huge world to us. So we threw a ton of music in it. But funny story, we had hired 2 actors who couldn't play the guitar because when we hired the actors, there was no music in the play. So we had a dear friend, Dan DeMars from Norwich, played the guitar off stage. But we knew after that first reading, okay, this thing needs music. Then Bob went away with lots of notes from our process. That's what we do. We give the director notes of what we think. We listen to his hopes and dreams. And then he rewrote it. And it wasn't the rewrite we were looking for. It was really interesting. And Bob will be the first person to say this. The play went in lots of different adventures and journeys to other places. And we said, we went back to the drawing board and said, no, let's keep it this night. Let's keep it this one night, and it's a true story where John Lennon and Paul McCartney were stuck in a motel room because of a hurricane. When Bob came back to that, we then began growing this night and the relationship between the 2 boys and what they ended up, what the tension was between them, about writing hits versus writing from your heart. We workshopped it a year ago, and it was so right. It was so right. We had about 240 people there, and we knew we had something special. And then we went back to the drawing boards again, workshopped it again 9 months ago in September, and it's ready. 3 years, 4 years.
And what would you say is the #1 reason people should come to this show?
It's the best thing I've ever seen about the Beatles. Really is. Not a jukebox musical, a real beautiful play that will have you laughing and crying.
And do you come to this because you love the Beatles? What do they mean to you personally?
I'm a total music-aholic. I'm a crazy music lover. The Beatles, I remember being asked when I was in 4th grade or 5th grade by a lifeguard at my beach. He said, Carol, he was just being really nice to the little kids and trying to make conversation. He said, who's your favorite band? And I remember sort of panicking because there was Helen Reddy, there was Carly Simon, but I thought, it's the Beatles. And I had a friend sitting next to me, and she said the Beatles too. So it's just funny how, even though this must have been 1970 something, and we were little kids, we knew that there was something in their music that made us feel sort of free. It was like a window into, wow, rock and roll is really about freedom. But along with my love for the Beatles, it really is this play and what Bob has written. I'm almost more passionate about that because I'm so excited about the story behind the facade, what we all think people are. In this play, I feel like we get to know who maybe they were.
And so Michael Ganio, who's an assistant professor of theater, works with you at Dartmouth.
Yes.
He designed the set. Can
Yes.
you just talk a little bit about his design and both your and his vision for the design of this play?
So that's been really fun, and I've been lucky enough to work with Michael over really about 20 years in the professional theater and other places in the country. Okay, so easy design challenge in a way. It's a motel room, and there is a motel that the Beatles stayed in, so we did all of our research. Then the really neat thing that we went through is how to make the play really accessible for our audience members, and that was the design question. So we have the room, and it is seedy and ugly and all the things that it should be. It's small, it's too small for these young boys. It turns out being a huge mess by the end of the play. That's a joy. When I was directing a scene, I thought, should we start cleaning up? And the boys said, no. So it's just, there's junk all over the room by the end of the night. Michael has a really wonderful perspective about how to use a thrust theater, because we are not a proscenium, we are not a flat theater, we're an inclusive theater. So he took this motel room and he turned it. So it's slightly at an angle so that every seat in the house will literally feel like they're in the room with our actors. A really neat addition is around the proscenium are all the dates of the tour. And that's a really important thing for people to realize is the Beatles did, I don't know, it's 30-something cities in like 2 months. It's crazy. It's a different city every night, and all the dates are there. And then Dan Kotlowitz, who's also at Dartmouth, our lighting designer, is giving us some projections to help us understand the hurricane and the fans and the insanity.
And can you talk more a little bit about Beatlemania and how it takes place in this play?
This has been a fascinating thing for me, and someone of my age, I was so little when the Beatles were happening that to a certain extent, I took for granted that people go crazy over rock stars. It hadn't happened this way before. I know Elvis had a certain mania, but nothing like what the Beatles had. When the Beatles got off the plane in New York City, the screaming was ear-shattering, and the world had not experienced a mania like this before. And I feel as a director, I don't completely understand why, except that, Kennedy had been assassinated. It was post-World War II. There was just a need, I think, for joy, right? England was still living on rationing from World War II for years. And so the mania has been truly shocking to me in doing my research. I've discovered that in these concerts, nobody had done stadium rock concerts before. I thought they hadn't. It was the Beatles were the first ones to do things like Shea Stadium. There were no security guards. There weren't enough. So these things were complete crazy affairs where people were getting trampled on and taken out by ambulance. The poor Beatles couldn't hear themselves sing. They had their shirts ripped off as they were trying to leave places. They used to hide, rather than going out in a nice limo or a tour bus or whatever, they'd take them out in an ambulance so that nobody knew the Beatles were in there. A fish truck was used at a certain time. And these poor boys, it's funny, they're the Beatles, were completely sequestered. They almost had not a moment's freedom away from a hotel room or the stage in the entire tour. This is the 1964 tour. So that's been an amazing awakening for me and for my actors is we can't take for granted the brutal sort of forces that were sort of attacking these guys, but they were so lovely and so polite, and that's been another really exciting discovery.
And then really, where do you see this production going in the future after Northern Stage?
Oh, I just hope it goes everywhere. I do, because the Beatles are an international experience. They are beloved. I hope it goes to England. We will be, we're working with some New York producers for a New York production. You know, as a producer, you never want to predict the future, but my hope for the future is that this play brings joy to just thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. And I know you've enjoyed the rehearsals, Ruby. You've been in there, and that's what we want to give everybody else.
Yeah, it's a truly special production. I love it a lot.
Yeah.
And then finally, I guess what's up next after Only Yesterday at Northern
Oh my
Stage?
goodness, so Disgraced. I get to direct Disgraced. It's a new play, Pulitzer Prize winning play by Ayad Akhtar. It is it's a storm of social and political issues, personal relationships that are affected by prejudice, by business, by the constraints of business. I'm thrilled for this production, and it's so important for our region to do Disgraced. It's actually, just to give you a quick description of it, we have a white woman married to a Muslim American lawyer. His partner is an African American woman lawyer, and the white woman's art dealer or advisor is Jewish. And so what everybody in the play is dealing with is an issue with a mosque and possible terrorism in New York, and how the interpersonal relationships are just, they ricochet off each other in this play, and there's anger, and there's tears, and there's hope for understanding each other better. So as the regions, you know, we're Vermont and New Hampshire's only LORT, fully professional regional year-round theater. This is an important play and a fantastic ride, and I'm really excited to broaden our audiences for this play.
Anything else you want to add about either play?
No, I'm so excited.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
For tickets and more information, visit northernstage.org or call 802-296-7000. Thanks so much.
Thank you.